Welcome. I'm Dr. Yoel Ju. I'm a sleep medicine physician and scientist, and I'm committed to bringing you serious science for luminous sleep and brighter brains. Today, we're doing something a little different and really fun and exciting for me. We're in the kitchen cooking with the authors of Eat Better, Sleep Better. First, Dr. Marie-Pierre St-Onge is a professor at Columbia University. She is a leading scientist in the field of sleep, energy balance, and cardiometabolic health. She brings the evidence-based foundation behind how our diet, such as macronutrient balance, tryptophan, magnesium, and polyphenolic compounds, all affect sleep quality, circadian rhythms, and overall well-being. Her co-author, Kat Craddock, is the editor-in-chief and CEO of Saveur magazine. She is a French-trained chef, a veteran recipe developer, and a food media leader. She translated Dr. St-Onge's science into recipes that are flavorful, practical, and realistic for busy home cooks. Today, we're going to cook 3 recipes from the book. A chickpea or garbanzo gemelli pasta with butternut squash, walnuts, and Parmesan cheese. We'll also make a warm kale and pita salad. And lastly, a banana-chamomile shortcake. If you'd like to cook along with us, they have shared the chickpea gemelli recipe, which is available for free at yoelju.com. Better yet, get the whole cookbook, Eat Better, Sleep Better, available wherever you get your books. Please get your ingredients and then join us as we talk food and sleep science. As we chop, stir, bake, and taste, we'll go through the science behind sleep-supportive eating, how to build meals and meal plans that optimize sleep, and strategies for making healthy food craveable, easy, delicious, and satisfying. Let's get cooking.
Good morning. Welcome to Marie-Pierre St-Onge and Kat Craddock, who will be coming back. So today we are cooking with the co-authors of Eat Better, Sleep Better. So first I'll introduce Marie-Pierre St-Onge, who is a professor at Columbia University. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to write this cookbook?
Yeah, so I have a PhD in nutrition, and my research focuses on the influence of sleep on energy balance regulation, but also the bidirectionality of the association between sleep, obesity, and cardiometabolic risk factors. And a few years ago, I was quoted in the New York Times about some research related to diet and sleep, and was approached by our book agent to write a book. And she put me in contact with Kat. She matched us up, and we wrote Eat Better, Sleep Better together, where I provide information on the science related to sleep and diet, and Kat developed wonderful recipes to put all this information into action.
Great. And then Kat Craddock, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came together to write the cookbook?
Sure, yeah. I am the editor-in-chief and CEO of Saveur magazine. I've been with the publication for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was a French-trained chef. So I studied at a French culinary school, Le Cordon Bleu, after college, and worked in restaurants as a pastry chef and a bread baker for about a decade before I kind of gradually started moving over to the food media side of things. And now I head up editorial operations at Saveur. I'm also the owner of the publication now. We are a 30-year-old food and travel publication specializing in global cuisine, and we are, as of 2 years ago, a fully independent publication as well. During the pandemic, Marie-Pierre and I, as she mentioned, our book agent paired us up. I was looking for a cookbook writing project, and our agent had a really great idea to match up the two of us. So we spent those weird pandemic days remotely developing these recipes together using Marie-Pierre's science and whatever training I'd kind of gleaned along the way working in food.
And I have the least amount of food and nutrition expertise here. I am a complete amateur home cook. So I'm really excited to cook with both of you. I'm a professor of neurology at WashU in St. Louis. I specialize in sleep medicine, and I do research on how sleep interacts with neurodegenerative diseases. And right now I'm writing a book and a website targeted to the public, hopefully to help people, especially women, sleep better, feel better, and hopefully age better with good brain health. So I'm super excited. Let's see, we are going to be cooking a couple different recipes today. So I'm going to show the book. So here's the cookbook, Eat Better, Sleep Better. I guess we'll find out if the video got reversed on Zoom. So the first recipe we're going to be cooking is a chickpea gemelli with butternut, squash, walnuts, and Parmesan. And then Marie-Pierre, you were going to make the kale and pita salad. And then I also have a shortbread with banana, a compote recipe, which we'll get going after the chickpea gemelli starts. So maybe Marie-Pierre, you can start us off with the pasta. So this is gemelli. It kind of looks like mac and cheese, but actually has butternut squash in it. Why chickpea pasta as opposed to regular wheat pasta? And why would we select a different like bean-based pasta?
Yeah, so we're looking for recipes that were more plant forward because our research is showing that healthy plant-based diets are associated with better sleep quality. And so I think it's important to have a blend of both. We can have whole wheat pasta, but we can also have chickpea pasta, increases the tryptophan protein content of the pasta. And also chickpeas are a rich source of micronutrients, magnesium is also very important in chickpeas. At the same time, I'm cutting my kale stems to make it for my kale salad.
And then we have banza, which is a chickpea, or it's a pasta made just from chickpeas. So, Kat, I realized I salted the pasta water. Are we supposed to do that with the chickpea pasta, just like for regular pasta?
Yes, yeah, just like you're cooking regular pasta. There are a lot of different brands of chickpea and legume-based pastas. Banza's is probably the most widely available. But when it comes to cooking it, and we have some cooking instructions in the recipe, we cook it in salted water for 5 minutes. Always just read the instructions on the box too, just because it's a little less of a consistent product than your standard wheat flour pasta, and they may all be a little bit different. The goal of getting it cooked off first is to cook it until it's al dente. So just barely cooked, still a little bit of bite to it. Also be aware that chickpea pastas tend to cook a bit faster than wheat flour pastas do. This only cooks for 5 minutes to get to al dente, whereas a wheat pasta might take 8 to 10. And unlike wheat pasta that has gluten in it and is a little bit stretchier, when chickpea pasta is overcooked, it has a tendency to break down. So you really want to set a timer and make sure that you're erring on the side of underdone rather than overdone with this.
All right, so I'm setting my timer right now. All right, so 5 minutes. Okay, and then just in terms of, why legumes or beans, Marie-Pierre, can you tell us a little bit about the combining of proteins and carbs, which you discuss in the book? What kinds of proteins should we be looking for and why, and what kind of carbs should we be looking for when we combine them?
Yeah, so we're trying to increase the absorption of tryptophan and transport to the brain, and that requires carbohydrates to be able to transfer other amino acids to the muscle, while transporters are freed up for tryptophan to travel to the brain for the synthesis of melatonin. So tryptophan is a building block for melatonin. So that's why this amino acid in particular is very important from the diet, because we can't get tryptophan, or we can't make tryptophan ourselves. We have to get it from the diet. So it's important to have protein-rich foods along with carbohydrates. And we're trying to have as much as possible more whole grain carbohydrates, more complex carbohydrates. So carbohydrates that come from whole grain foods, but also legumes and fruits and vegetables, rather than simple carbohydrates that we get from the white stuff.
Okay, so we want to get tryptophan from protein, and we want to try to get those from plant-based sources or a variety of sources, and then we need to pair those with carbohydrates, which are hopefully kind of more complex carbohydrates.
Correct.
Okay, so things that are brown or have fiber.
Exactly. So your brown rice, brown wheat bread, brown pasta, legume-based pastas are higher in fiber as well. And we're also looking for the more colorful vegetables because they are rich in polyphenolic compounds, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds that are also very important for healthy sleep.
Okay. So I think something that's a great takeaway is that foods that are good for your sleep are probably good for your overall health as well. So I feel like there's like nothing good for your sleep that's bad for your overall health. So that's
yes, it's really nice that everything is concordant with one another, right? Well, it's good for your brain health too. The mind diet, right, is helpful for your brain. It's helpful for your sleep.
Great. And then just in terms of the timing of the tryptophan we get. So obviously a lot of people take, melatonin supplements in the evening and stuff. So how should we be timing our tryptophan intake? Should we be binging on meat right before we go to bed?
Yeah, so we often hear this story about Thanksgiving and falling asleep immediately after consuming turkey. It's not that quick. What you eat has to be processed. It has to go through your gastrointestinal tract right before it travels elsewhere in the body. And that process takes hours. So it's not this quick fix. So to me, my take on this is to be able to have the nutrients on hand at the ready when it's time to produce melatonin, when it's time to fight infections, when it's time for healthy sleep. So it's just making sure that the nutrients are all available, and also what we eat, all the plant-based foods influence our gut microbiome. That takes time. You want to modulate your gut microbiome to have a healthful gut microbiome that produces more short-chain fatty acids that then regulate circadian rhythms and improve sleep. So to me, it's a day-long affair, and that's why we have recipes from breakfast all the way to like good lunch options and dinner options, dessert options as well.
So we should be getting our tryptophan and really, a good diet throughout the day. Something that my patients ask about is taking melatonin supplements and the best time to take it. The thing is, like, our pineal glands make melatonin all day. It's just that the pineal gland saves up the melatonin and then releases it right a couple hours before bedtime. And so we really need to be supporting our sleep and circadian health by, getting all the building blocks available 24 hours a day, as opposed to trying to supplement just at a certain time.
Exactly. I'll turn on my oven because I realize I have to preheat to 450, and that's going to take some time.
Oh, yeah. All right. Kat, can you talk a little bit about developing this chickpea gemelli recipe and how you came up with the different combination of ingredients? I don't think I've ever done, say, Parmesan cheese with butternut squash before.
Sure. Yeah. I think that one thing that was really interesting to me about putting Marie-Pierre's research into action was that there is such a great emphasis on diversity in our diet and making sure that there are a lot of different ingredients, maybe more ingredients than people could be used to cooking with if they're not regularly cooking. Since I've been working in food my whole career, first in restaurants and then in recipe testing and development, I always just kind of naturally get a lot of variety in my diet and a lot of different ingredients. And that's a little bit, maybe a little bit more of a pivot for people to kind of get out there and start incorporating more ingredients into their cooking. But what I was really trying to do is make sure that even though there were a lot of ingredients and a lot of combinations that we were incorporating into these recipes, that they still kind of scratched that like weeknight easy food fix. And, this isn't only for mom or dad who may be not sleeping well, it's for their whole family. So everybody needs to be able to kind of enjoy this food. And I didn't want this to be overwhelming or daunting. So I wanted something that kind of felt like macaroni and cheese, right? Comfort food, winter fare, rib sticking, comforting carbs, right? We all love that kind of food. And I have a background in cheese as well. Before I went to culinary school, I wanted to kind of be able to incorporate the flavor of cheese without, all of the nutritional hazards that might come with it sometimes. So the color, obviously, of butternut squash came to mind first. And I played with it a little bit, incorporating it with some of those savory flavors. I tried it with miso. I tried it with fermented black beans. But really, at the end of the day, a little bit of Parmesan Reggiano or good quality There are a number of other similar cheeses, American style Parmesans or Grana Padano, which is another classic Italian grating cheese. They're so flavor dense that you really don't need a lot of it. So when I developed a recipe for a sauce that kind of got at that macaroni and cheese consistency, going with a really aged cheese like that and incorporating it into something a little bit sweet, a little bit starchy, really got at what we were trying to accomplish with that flavor. This is a recipe that comes together in one pot. I'm doing it in two just to keep things moving a little bit quickly here, but I also wanted to make sure that this was not something that was going to take over your whole kitchen. It takes a little bit of time to prep, but all of the ingredients I actually tested this out for this shoot. I wanted to see if I could get everything pretty easily already prepped out from the grocery store. I was able to get cleaned and cut squash all ready to go. I was able to get onions pre-chopped. You can either get them in the produce section or in the freezer section. The one thing that I would recommend people do not cut corners on, though, is getting pre-grated cheese for this. Pre-grated cheese is totally fine for topping, for a lot of different uses, but frequently pre-grated Parmesan has some anti-caking agents, preservatives, things like that to keep it longer in the fridge to keep it from clumping. And those ingredients will kind of prevent it from melting nicely into your sauce. So I would recommend getting a hunk of Parmesan, whether it's Parmigiano Reggiano or Belgioso. There's an American brand that's pretty widely available and really reliable as well. Get the hunk, grate it yourself, and you're going to see a much smoother, silky cheese sauce using it that way.
It's so easy to grate cheese directly. It's not like, you don't save much time by just buying pre-grated cheese, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I find it does last longer in the fridge too. A hunk of Parmesan, if you wrap it well, it's going to keep a lot better than the pre-grated stuff that has a lot more surface area to it.
Yeah, I also feel like food tastes better if you can kind of taste it with your eyes first. To like see the cheese being grated, it just like makes you so hungry for it. So I feel like that's like the best part of any dish is kind of like the ceremonial cheese dusting. And then, Kat, you had mentioned that this is a recipe that could potentially be made ahead. So how would we modify the recipe if we wanted to make it ahead?
Yeah, that's actually, it's a great idea that I think it works beautifully this time of year when potluck season, or if you're doing a big Thanksgiving or holiday meal. If you multiply this by 3 or 4, depending on the size of your pan, it works beautifully in kind of a big baking dish. I did it in a big lasagna pan. It's in the oven right now. I can show it to you guys in a little bit. But if you just kind of multiply it by 3 or 4, tip the whole pasta into the roasting pan and put the cheese on top and throw it in the oven. It's like a big baked macaroni and cheese, right? And it works as a good side dish. It works as a main because it's much more protein rich than wheat flour pasta. So it's certainly impressive, and it has the same kind of oven to table wow moment that a big baked macaroni and cheese would have as well.
So for that, would you make the fried sage leaves later and just add them on at the end, or do they freeze okay?
Yeah, I would make the fried sage, make the fried sage the same way you normally would, but don't put it on top of the pasta and don't put the walnuts on top of the pasta until it comes out of the oven, because they're more likely to burn in the oven. But you do want to fry the sage leaves ahead of time, which I'm going to do that right now, because getting all of that beautiful sage flavor into the olive oil, I think really kind of elevates the macaroni and cheese and makes it good for grown-ups as much as it is good for kids.
I think
sage and fried sage and butternut squash combination is very classic. It's very easy I just dropped a few sage leaves into hot olive oil. I don't know if you guys can see it in there, but as soon as it goes into the pan, it just fills your kitchen with this beautiful, beautiful herbal aroma. And it's a very impressive kind of flex to top your pasta with frizzled, delicious fried sage leaves at the end.
Yeah, it smells so good right now. I'm doing my sage leaves. So I think, I drained my pasta, and now I'm doing the sage. And once that's done, then I guess I'll take those out and everything gets put back into the same pot, which is great.
Yes, I'm going right in with my pasta now, and I still set a timer. So just encouraging everybody, it's not cheating. Do set a timer. Don't walk away from it.
All right. And then the other recipe I'm making, I made ahead. So let me see. Let me find my recipe. This was a banana chamomile shortcake. And this is a recipe with biscuits that are super quick, and it has oats in it. It has oats, whole wheat powder, as well as all-purpose flour. And it's really easy because it has olive oil as opposed to using butter that you have to cut in. So it actually makes it a lot easier to use as the healthier fats. So I made them ahead. I'm going to go grab them just to show them off.
Can't wait to see those.
Yes, I haven't baked them yet. So this is...
okay, pre-baked. Nice.
Here, so I made 13 biscuits, not 12, but I wasn't going to start over it. So I'm going to pop these in the oven now.
The thing I love about that recipe too is classic rolled out Southern style biscuits. They take a lot more kind of skill and finesse, and you don't want to overwork them too much. These are a drop biscuit, so you really can't mess it up. You just mix everything in a bowl and then scoop it and plop it right into your cooking pan.
Yeah, it was so easy. I have like the cylindrical shaped measuring cup, so I just plopped them in. So that was super easy. Let me get myself organized here. How do you know when the sage leaves are done?
You'll see them sort of getting a little bit darker, not browning, but they almost start to look a little bit translucent, I would say.
Okay.
And they'll be crispy, and you don't quite want to get any more color on them than just that sort of like translucent-y darker green. But once they're crispy, you can pull them out and set them on a little paper towel. You can make those ahead of time for sure.
They tend to start to curl a little bit, no?
Yep, they curl up a little bit. I usually try and flatten them down a little bit with my spoon or whatever I'm using to scoop them out so that they get evenly crisped.
So the chickpea gemelli recipe is one of the 2 recipe rotation in my household because I absolutely love squash, all squash, and the soy braised miso butternut squash is a recipe that I make pretty much every week during the fall winter when it's squash season. And the butternut squash are always bigger than you expect them to be. So one squash to me gets me one recipe of just a butternut squash side dish, and then I use the other piece to make the chickpea gemelli.
Wow. Yeah, I have like half the squash left over. I forgot, like, we should probably wear gloves, at least on one hand, to cut butternut squash, because, like, the orange flesh kind of stains your flesh, and you have to scrub it off. So I've forgotten. I need to get back into squash eating mode this season.
I should also mention that the recipe uses butternut because that's the most widely available all year round winter squash. But you can really use any winter squash for this dish. I'm using delicata right now because they were at the farmer's market and beautiful. And butternut squash, usually, especially the really big ones, the skin is quite thick and you're definitely going to want to peel that with a vegetable peeler. The smaller butternut squash or any smaller winter squash like delicata, I've just been leaving the skin right on there. Cut them in half, scoop everything out, and cut the stem part off. But the skin is so thin that it'll blend up beautifully. And I don't know, Marie-Pierre, you can weigh in if there's more nutrition in the skin or not, or more fiber.
But I never thought I never knew that the butternut squash skin was edible. I always peel it off, and I always liked that kabocha squash and acorn squash and those delicata squash that you could eat the skin. I love that. But never I thought that butternut squash, because of the waxiness of it, you couldn't really eat it.
Yeah, I would say the big ones, it's probably going to be too tough, but sometimes you see the little baby butternuts. Yeah. I've eaten those, no problem. I've blitzed it into a soup. Maybe some of the ones that are, I think sometimes at larger supermarket chains, they may wax them a little bit, and if it feels like there is actually wax on the outside, I just run that under hot water and give it a good scrub to remove it.
Okay.
But the skin is, and it's not really that much different than a zucchini. They just leave it on the vine a little bit longer.
Oh, I see.
Let me wait for Marie-Pierre to come back.
My oven's ready, so I'm gonna.
Okay, yeah, pop things in.
This is like my one sheet pan of vegetables for the warm pita salad. Looks great, right?
That looks beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna.
All right, so now this says 20 to 30 minutes, 20 to 40 minutes.
So I took out the sage leaves, and now I'm cooking the onions, garlic, and the butternut squash that's been cubed. So I guess we do that for maybe 8 to 10 minutes before we mash them all up.
Yeah, and if you notice your onions start browning before then, and you can cut this step a little bit shorter and just cook the squash longer once the liquid has been added. My pan was maybe a little hot when I put the vegetables in, and the onions are starting to caramelize. I don't want to get too much color on this because I still want to retain that nice golden orange color in the finished sauce. So I'm going to go right in with my wine right now. And Marie-Pierre, do you want to talk a little bit about the wine that we've incorporated into a lot of these recipes? And I know that you mentioned that there might be melatonin in that as well, right?
Yeah, so some wines and grapes, there's some melatonin. So some wines could have melatonin. There's also a lot of polyphenols, mostly in the red wines. So we've been incorporating wine, also beer actually, in one of the in the muffin recipe. We use a stout. So they've been shown to have a lot of polyphenolic compounds, also melatonin. So we've been including those in the recipes. It kind of burns off the alcohol and you get the benefits of the polyphenolic compounds and melatonin.
So Kat, what should we use for the flavor for the people who don't drink alcohol or don't have it around?
Yeah, this recipe uses a dry white wine. I had a holiday party a couple days ago and I had some leftover bubbles in the fridge, so I actually put Prosecco in there. But you want to make sure it's not a sweet wine. You can also absolutely, if you're not an alcohol drinker, you can buy cooking wine at the grocery store. Just be aware that it has a lot of salt added to it to make it shelf stable. So you're going to want to dial back the salt in the recipe and then just season to taste at the end so that you're not over seasoning.
And then I don't have any open wine. And I generally don't drink wine, so I have vermouth that I keep in the fridge. I use it too, and because it's you don't want to keep like a half open bottle of wine. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, does it matter when you're cooking with wine if it's an old bottle of wine, if it's stayed on your counter for a couple of weeks? Like you wouldn't drink it, but if you could cook with it, is that?
I would give it a sniff. If it has turned to vinegar, I wouldn't use it in place of wine. And I usually will keep it in the fridge if I'm not going to drink it right away. I'll keep it in the fridge just knowing that I'm going to want to cook with it. But yeah, I mean, this is not the best bottle of wine that you want to open up to put in your macaroni on a Wednesday night. If you've got leftovers, great. You can pack it out into little kind of plastic containers and throw it in the freezer too if you're not moving through it quickly enough. Fortified wines like vermouth will last a lot longer because they have some brandy added to them. So that is a preservative as well. I keep my vermouth and port and fortified wines like that. My mom and dad always kept port in the liquor cabinet indefinitely. I wouldn't recommend that. I would keep it in the fridge just to keep it a little bit longer. But yeah, I mean, if it's been around for a few days, you're still fine to cook with that.
Good to know.
And then Marie-Pierre, what kind of micronutrients or macronutrients are in squash in general?
Yeah, squash is high in vitamin A. It has magnesium, vitamin B6, potassium, a lot of potassium. So those are good micronutrients. So we're supporting sleep. Vitamin B6, magnesium, and zinc are relevant for conversion of tryptophan to melatonin. And they've also been shown to be associated with better sleep quality. So yeah.
Are there certain squashes that are better than others?
I don't know. There might be some small differences between different squash, but to me, I feel like the darker orange colored squash, pretty much you can count on them having vitamin A and a lot of polyphenolic compounds.
Yeah, I feel like it's a nice shortcut. Just the more colorful stuff is generally better for you. Yeah. And then, Kat, I wanted to ask about, what are some tips to make healthy food more appealing? So, I feel like, it's always great when we can, plan ahead and make healthy foods. But, at the end of a long work day, it's a lot easier just to get takeout or, make mac and cheese from the box. If we do take the time to make healthy food, how do we make it, taste as good and as appealing as something that's easier?
I love this question. Like I mentioned, I have a French culinary training background, and I'm very used to cooking with a lot of bacon and cream and butter and a lot of things that maybe Marie-Pierre wouldn't recommend. consuming in the quantities that I'm used to cooking with them. So as we were developing these recipes, we kind of went back and forth a little bit to try and figure out how to achieve those sort of same satisfying effects while having a more healthier outcome. For example, bacon is an ingredient that I like to use in moderation, but pretty regularly. And it didn't necessarily add much to a lot of what we were doing. So instead of that, we decided that we were going to start swapping in more olive oil and smoked paprika, which is an ingredient that's used in Spain. It's pretty widely available at well-stocked grocery stores, or there are a couple single origin spice companies that I really like. This is a flavor that it really brings that kind of rich smokiness to a dish, whether it's a clam chowder or macaroni and cheese, something where you might want that kind of bacony flavor to it without adding, and it's really just smoked ground red peppers. So this particular dish, you can finish it with black pepper at the end. I really like to sprinkle a little bit of smoked paprika on. It gives it a little bit more color. It's, you eat with your eyes and your nose before you eat with your mouth. So that kind of fragrance and visual appeal is really, I think it really adds a lot to the experience. We also have a whole chapter in the book of kind of make ahead pantry stuff. And if you spend maybe a Sunday afternoon working through a couple of those dishes, there are some kind of condiments and toppings and finishing sauces that keep well either in your pantry or in your refrigerator, so that when you do come home starving at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, you really need to get something healthy on the stove and in your stomach fast. Having some of those things made ahead of time, and you really just do need to boil some pasta or cook some rice or just do the kind of last little bits, that having some of that heavy lifting done ahead of time really makes a big difference.
Something that I was really pleased to find out is that chilling or cooling down carbs makes them healthier. So, for example, like plain white pasta or white rice, if you cook them and then you let them chill in the freezer overnight, or if you freeze them, then they actually kind of take longer to digest in your system and spike your glucose less. So that's great for me because I like to cook those types of things ahead of time and freeze them, and that way I can just microwave them when I need them. So I think that's like a healthy, healthier way of eating that actually makes life easier in terms of how long it takes to cook. All right. How do we know when to blitz this? I think mine needs to go a little bit longer before I blend them.
I would give it a poke with the tip of a paring knife or a fork. And if it's tender, if it slides right off, then it's ready. And if it's still kind of firm, like a hard potato, keep going. And if you're losing liquid, if it's boiling off before the squash is soft, you can always add another splash. I don't know if you noticed that when I was draining the pasta, I reserved a cup of the pasta water. So that goes in there with some vegetable, with some broth. I call for either mushroom or chicken, but any stock you have around works just fine. That pasta water, there's a bit of starch in there that will help kind of bind the sauce a little bit, keep it from separating, keep it silky and smooth, and help it cling to the pasta. So that stuff is gold. Don't dump it all down the drain. Save a little bit of it. But if you need to add a little bit more tap water, that's totally fine. I think I'm actually going to do that a little bit because my squash was cut kind of large.
So even with the chickpea pasta, there's starch in the pasta water?
Yes.
How long did it take to develop all the recipes and the science? What was the process for getting all of this together into the final product?
I'll let Marie-Pierre speak to the science. Maybe her whole career, probably.
The science takes a long time. Like, writing it up is, it took time too, but getting the science always takes a long time, right? Doing the research is what really takes time. But writing the book took a few years. Yeah, it took some time developing the recipes, testing them. So Kat tested all of the recipes, to make sure that they were all proper, with proper quantities and ratios. And then I tried them at home as well. Had my kids, my husband taste them, get their feedback, try to see like, okay, how would a person who's doing this at home be able to do it? Is it something that we could do like we were talking about, coming home from work, or are those recipes too involved? And it was great because, I could say confidently that a lot of the recipes, although Kat was saying seem to have a lot of ingredients, they're not very hard to put together and relatively quick to assemble for dinner. And there's some that are longer and they're more, we keep them for the weekend. And often those recipes make a big batch, and thankfully you have leftovers for the rest of the week.
I talked about your meal plan, Marie-Pierre. I think that's an interesting topic to kind of delve into a little bit with that in mind, that we did really kind of develop a schedule of how people can incorporate these recipes into a full month's worth of eating, including using up their leftovers and not eating the same thing every single day, because it's a good way to burn out your palate and make you not want to continue eating this way.
Yeah, I do love that section that has, I think it's a 28-day eating plan, where it just tells you day by day kind of what to eat and how to combine the different recipes so that you're getting novelty as well as, a good nutritional balance.
Mm-hmm.
Marie-Pierre, how did you kind of balance out the different macronutrients, the different, the recipes of over those 28 days?
Yeah, so all of the recipes, I actually ran them all through NDSR, nutrient database software for research, where I knew the whole nutritional composition of each of the recipes, down to its amino acid profile, fatty acid profile, all the micronutrients that we were talking about. And then when I put together the meal plan, I kind of assemble the recipes in such a way as to maximize how much tryptophan, magnesium, vitamin B6, zinc, fiber there would be in a single day, and try to go at it that way. Because some recipes are higher in one nutrient than another, and so mixing them in that way would maximize the proportions. And also thinking about which are the recipes that take a little longer, that could be done on the weekend, and then that would have leftovers that you could use for lunch on a weekday or for dinner on a weekday, for pre-preparing breakfast for the week, or things like that. So that's how I kind of put it all together.
What would you recommend for the vegetarians or vegans in terms of, what are like the plant-based protein sources that we should be looking for and combining? What are some easy swaps to do for the recipes?
Yeah, so we have a different list of foods in the book that show which ones are higher in tryptophan and different vitamins, serotonin, melatonin as well. But you could use some tofu in place of some of the meats. When I was testing some of the recipes at home, my daughter wanted to be vegetarian for a year. She was, at that time, I think she was 12, around that age, and she said, I'd like to try to be vegetarian for 1 year. I'll start on January 1. So that way I know when my year starts. Okay. So there was a recipe that called for, one of the recipes I think calls for sausage, I think in the stuffed tomatoes. And for her, I swapped it with tempeh. And so Kat, I don't know, you might want to talk to different swaps that you can make for different recipes also that make it more vegetarian friendly.
So Kat, we were just saying how the pita and kale recipe, it's one pan. The gemelli recipe is one pot, and then the shortcake recipe also I made in one bowl, where the wet ingredients were just added to the dry one. So these are all great recipes. One less big bowl to wash.
Yeah, working in professional kitchens, you get really used to having somebody else that does your dishes for you all the time, which is a real blessing. I don't have that at home. I do have a dishwasher machine, but yeah, as much as we can streamline and as few dishes as possible, it was definitely a goal here as well. We don't need to create more work and more anxiety and clutter for anybody with this project.
Are you ready to blend?
Yes, I was just going to say, while I was working at my technical difficulties, I turned the stove off because this squash is nice and soft and ready to go. I have a stick blender, which I use all the time. I like pureed soups a lot, so these are super duper handy. I particularly like this one because it's got a removable blade that's easy to clean. Ooh. But I have it plugged in right next to the stove. I turned it off because we don't want it actively cooking while we blend, but I If you have an outlet by the stove, I find it just as easy to leave it there and not worry about moving it around. So this is going to be noisy for a minute. Excuse me.
All right, and then I'm gonna blend too, so I'm gonna go on mute.
All right.
If you don't have a stick blender, a regular jug blender is totally fine for this. If you don't have extra appliances, you can also really do this with a potato masher and just leave it a little bit more shaggy and coarse. But if you want that nice silky consistency, blending it either with a stick blender or a classic blender will do you right. I don't love this in a food processor. I find that it's too liquidy for something like that, and they have a tendency to splash over the edges.
Right, I'm all done with my recipe. The warm pita salad with kale, feta, tomatoes, and chickpeas. And I think it came out beautifully. I love the brightness of the greens here. There you go. Kat, I'm very proud of myself on this one.
And then once that puree is nice and smooth, if you want to be really chefy about it, you can run it through a fine mesh sieve. We didn't do that. It's not necessary at all. And then I already have my pasta already cooked. So I add that to the sauce and turn it right back on to bring it up to a boil once more.
Yeah, that sauce comes together very well. It's not runny or anything like that. It really is very creamy.
Yeah, and if you're making a large batch and baking it and you want to reserve that kind of creaminess and not have it be like a dry baked macaroni and cheese, you can add another half cup or so of water. Just adjust the salt and pepper accordingly.
All right, I can unmute now. I love using the stick blender, but it was very noisy. So let me answer this page. Sorry. All right. So let's see. After we blenderize them, we put all the pasta back in, right?
And mine is already starting to bubble again. It doesn't need to be a big rolling boil. It's not a ton of liquid in there, but it's once you see it, a little action in there again, you're ready to go. And then you put half of your grated cheese in, a few tablespoons. I like to turn the heat off at that stage, so the cheese melts a little bit more gently. Give it a taste. Make sure that the seasoning is to your liking.
This looks so good.
Do you want to talk a little bit about salt, Marie-Pierre? And we're a little bit we season to taste a lot, and we're not being really scientific with the quantities of salt and everything.
Yeah, so when you cook at home, there's really very little salt in your dishes because it's all fresh ingredients, hopefully. So you usually season to taste. And salt is one of those, it's an acquired taste. And so you can cut down on salt. Oh, those look very beautiful. They're nice. If you can train your palate to eat less salt, and using other spices can also be very useful to compensate for less salt in your cooking. So I think it's good to cut down on salt as much as possible, but salt does amplify the flavor of various dishes. So you don't need to put a lot, just a tiny bit, and then and complement with other spices.
I have heard from a lot of my patients now who are taking GLP-1s that their ability to taste the salt has improved, or they didn't realize how salty their foods were, especially when they ate out. Yep. And now they're like, wow, that is overpoweringly salty. So it's interesting how that class of drugs really changes the perception of taste.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Interesting. I'm sure it does the same for sugar too, right?
Yeah, I think so. But also, like, I feel like people kind of know that there's sugar in sweet treats, whereas, it's people. Let me see. Kat, can you show it again? Beautiful. Whereas people aren't always aware of how salty their savory foods are.
Yeah.
Right. I need to find my cheese. Here we go. So we put half the cheese in, but after we take the heat off, right?
Yes. Yeah. Bring it back up to a boil with the pasta in there, then turn the heat off and stir in half of the cheese. And I put the smoked paprika, but I really like black pepper too. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on mine.
I love that the kale salad has sumac. Yeah. I love sumac. It's such a wonderful spice.
It's a berry that it grows on a tree, different from poison sumac, but it's a tree like poison sumac, but it's a edible berry that grows. It's a red berry. It's used in Persian cooking a lot, and it's got kind of a bright lemony flavor to it. You can use it in place of lemon, or you can, if you don't have sumac, you can use lemon juice as well. but sprinkled over sweeter savory dishes, I like it. It adds a really kind of nice bright pop that can be, yeah, if you're trying to get more flavor in without adding more salt, I think that kind of brightness can really bring a lot to a dish.
Great. And let me get this portioned out. So for the pasta, we put into wide bowls, top with the remaining Parmesan and walnuts. Well, let's talk about nuts. So Marie-Pierre, tell us about nuts and why they are so good for us.
Yeah, so nuts contain melatonin and a lot of polyphenolic compounds. So walnuts actually are being studied now as a food that can increase melatonin levels. But there are other nuts, pistachios. I'm actually on the board for the American Pistachio Growers. They're rich in polyphenolic compounds, phytomelatonin. They contain tryptophan. They have vitamin B6, magnesium. Studies are showing, actually, we just published a paper showing that consuming a diet that's higher in, or that's closely aligned with a Mediterranean diet, but also dietary approaches to stop hypertension, is associated with reduced risk of insomnia. And when we're looking at specific components of the diet, nuts are associated with lower risk of insomnia. So definitely adding nuts to the diet. That, I think, in US, nuts are not consumed very widely, but in other cultures, very much so. And so sometimes, they add a little bit of crunch to the foods that you eat. It helps to also make things a little more satisfying. Healthy fats, unsaturated fats, and lower in saturated fats for nuts.
Great.
They're good to include.
Nuts for me are like my most potentially deadly snack because I love them so much. So you really do have to use a scale or some way of measuring because it's so easy to keep just popping them in your mouth. Here's my pasta.
Very nice.
Yeah, very excited. All right.
That's my
beautiful.
All
right. And then let me assemble the shortcake. So I made these honey butter bananas before. Marie-Pierre, can you talk a little bit about bananas and why they're considered to be sleep supporting?
Yeah. So actually there was a study that was published a few years back that tested different types of fruits and juice from various fruits. And they tested pineapple, bananas, and oranges. The banana recipe actually has some pineapple juice. And they found that consuming the juice of those 3 different types of fruits increased melatonin levels in the blood.
Right. So bananas,
pineapples, and oranges. Were the 3 fruits that were studied there. But there's other studies of fruits, tart cherries have been studied to increase melatonin, improve sleep quality. So we've been incorporating a lot of those fruits in the diets. So the compotes also, there's compotes with cherries, there's a compote with pineapples and mangoes. And those honey buttered bananas to help improve sleep.
Yeah,
they're very versatile. Use them on pancakes
like,
too.
Cinnamon rolls because it has butter and cinnamon. It smells so good. And then these also have nuts on top. They get all sliced almonds. I'm going to try to assemble it so it looks pretty.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I love those honey butter bananas too. They're great this time of year. I'm always looking for edible gifts too. That and the compotes that we have and the granola packed into jars. They're really lovely hostess gift around the holidays because you can put it on breakfast, you can put it on ice cream, you can fill a cake with it. It's a real treat.
Yeah. Or like my husband does it, come by the kitchen, grab a handful, grab a handful, grab a handful. Every time I make the granolas, I make a double batch. It lasts less than a week. Yeah. It's very versatile. I like it in my cereal in the morning. My husband likes it on his yogurt.
I think that granola is something that's great to make at home because it's super easy. Like store-bought granolas have a lot of stuff you don't necessarily want to be eating as healthy food. A lot of store-bought granolas have a lot of sugar, and especially the ones with like the yummy chocolate bits or whatever. They tend to, if you actually look at the nutritional label, they're not quite as healthy as we were led to believe granola was. All right, so I put half of the biscuit down, and then we are putting on chamomile ginger cordial. I am actually substituting the chamomile tea with honey. So chamomile is a flower, actually, right? And it's drunk a lot as a tea or a tisane. Marie-Pierre, like what data are there to back up using chamomile to help with sleep versus, tart cherry juice or any of these other food or drink-based sleep aids?
Yeah, so at this point, I don't think we could say versus, because no study has been done to compare, chamomile tea versus tart cherry juice, but there are studies for tart cherry juice showing an improvement in sleep quality, especially in individuals who report having poor sleep, elderly adults having better sleep after consuming tart cherry juice for a couple of weeks. And, chamomile could also be useful for, it's more soothing. And I think it could be included as part of a ritual of winding down and soothing bedtime routine.
Yeah, so I think even if the data aren't super overwhelmingly great with thousands of people in the study, things like chamomile, tart cherry juice, these are generally pretty innocuous, right? No bad side effects. I think it's definitely worth trying for people, especially if they find it helps them kind of wind down and it's part of their getting ready for bed routine. I think a lot of people try to go from just being on the go during the day, and then they flop into bed at night expecting to fall asleep, and they get very frustrated that they can't. And, just like babies and kids need a nice regular routine to kind of wind down and get their brains and their bodies ready for bed, adults need that too. So I think having a nice warm beverage or, something that's like a little routine that helps people wind down and get ready for bed is great. So this I'm gonna show you step by step. So I put the half the biscuit down with the chamomile tea with honey, and there's a little bit of Greek yogurt on there. Greek yogurt is great because it has tons of protein compared to regular yogurt. And then do I do the bananas or I need to do the honey butter bananas, then the biscuit top. Okay, let me do that. So I'm vegetarian, and so when I was pregnant, I really had to work to get enough protein, and I ate so much Greek yogurt that
Really?
for a couple of years afterwards, I just couldn't even look at it because it was just, it reminded me of just forcing myself to eat all this Greek yogurt. I would blend it up with more protein powder, but now I like it again. All right, so here are the bananas.
Versatile.
Bananas are a good kind of all season filling for this dish, but if it's the middle of summer and you've got gorgeous nectarines from the farmer's market, just toss them with the chamomile tea or cordial and plop that on top, and don't even bother turning the oven on for the bananas. The rest of it all comes together really beautifully depending on whatever fruit you have around.
Yeah, the bananas were super fast, and I actually did them in my toaster oven last night, and they turned out great.
Nice.
I need to find my almonds. Where are they? There.
And using different compotes, I think, would work out well.
So for the people who don't know what a compote is, what is a compote?
It's similar to a jam, but not cooked as much, and it doesn't have as much sugar in it. So it's more like a sweet relish, I would say, where maybe the fruit is a little bit cooked, or maybe it's just kind of tossed with seasonings and flavorings and a little bit of sugar to balance it out. Whereas a jam is more a much higher ratio of fruit or sugar to fruit that you cook down to get more of like a paste jelly consistency, whereas a compote is more just kind of gently cooked fruit, spices, seasonings, whatever you want to include in it. We have 3 different versions in the book, and they are all endlessly riffable based on what you have and what you like.
I make a recipe, I freeze it in small batches.
Banana chamomile shortcake. I'm very
It's delicious.
almonds on top. I was thinking I made like a cranberry relish for Thanksgiving. That's my favorite part of the Thanksgiving meal, and it's not for a lot of other people, so I always have leftovers. But it's like that has a little bit of orange peel and whole cranberry. So I think that would be good on these shortcakes as well.
Yeah, definitely. We used so many cherries. I'm not sure if we have cranberries in the book. I don't remember.
I don't think so. No.
Really?
Yeah, but I think cranberries would be great.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll make up one of these shortcakes with cranberries and at least take a picture for you guys.
That'd be great. Yeah.
All right. Are you guys ready to eat?
Yeah, always.
All right. Well, let me get a fork out. What should we eat first? I guess I should eat the main meal.
Pasta is just coming out of the oven now too, so we
Oh,
can feed it
that
to me
looks
if we need to. That's my big lasagna pan, so it's definitely a big guy. This was a
wow.
recipe.
I'm sorry, how many recipes did you make? 4?
That was ×4. Yeah.
Wow.
3, and this is an extra deep 9x13 pan. Like I said, it's a big lasagna pan. I think the regular kind of 9x13 brownie pan, you could fill it with ×3. Should be fine. If you cool this down, you can also cut it into squares and freeze it if you're a meal prep sort of, if that fits into your life a little bit better. But I'm going to bring this to a party this week.
Great. All right. So I'm going to try to get a bite that includes a little bit of everything. So the sage and the nuts and the pasta.
Had you both worked with chickpea pasta before?
I have, just like when I saw it at the store. I do. I think the selection at stores here in St. Louis probably is not as broad as in New York City. But when I see it, I'll try different pastas, like, made with, I've seen ones made with like black beans, the rice base.
I've seen with lentils.
Oh yeah, and the lentil one. I do love just the chew of gluten in regular pasta, but I do try to get whole wheat pasta, especially for baked dishes, because they taste essentially the same. And
we have a soba noodle recipe in the book too. That's buckwheat flour pasta. That's one of my favorite recipes. It's kind of more of a summer noodle salad.
Oh, this is good. Yeah, and I guess like the soba noodles, the buckwheat noodles, like Asian noodles, they're cooked a little bit differently from pasta in that they are cooked to when they're soft, not al dente. So I think it's a little bit easier to cook non-wheat noodles, pastas, because of the texture.
Yeah.
It's so good. All right, now I'm gonna eat the shortcake. So it's brunch time, so we need to have something sweet and something savory.
It's standing eating in the kitchen is very restaurant industry. I feel like we're all between service right now.
Yeah, the little bit of Greek yogurt is so nice and creamy with the bananas. That is so good. Yeah, these biscuits or shortcakes are so easy, and I guess you can freeze them ahead as well, which makes it super easy for lazy mornings for brunch.
Yeah, absolutely. You can freeze them both raw, and if you have leftovers, you can freeze them baked. I wrap them tightly in plastic so they don't dry out in the freezer, but splitting them, especially out of the freezer, I would split them and maybe pop them in your toaster oven just to kind of freshen them up a little bit. But pouring the cordial or the tea over it will, if it's dry, it won't be anymore.
Well, we are actually past time, so maybe we can wrap up, and Marie-Pierre, maybe tell us like top 3 to 5 things that we should be keeping in mind as we cook to sleep better.
Yeah, so to me, making sure you have a good amount of fruits and vegetables throughout the day, very important. Having high fiber intakes, lower saturated fat intakes. So trying to eat more plant-forward diet is helpful for sleep.
Okay, great. And then, Kat, what tips do you have for cooking foods that are delicious and appealing that will also support our health and sleep?
I think the big takeaway for me working on this project was making sure that we're eating proteins and carbs in combinations. I don't know that we really got into that part of it, but maybe when I was offline, but how it's important to pair tryptophan-rich foods with carbohydrates so that we can absorb them properly and use them to create our own melatonin and serotonin. So those low-carb diets that I toyed with in high school and college. I've been trying to avoid that sort of thing these days and make sure that I am always pairing up healthy proteins with heart healthy carbs.
All right, great. So lots of fruits and veggies, especially colorful ones, lots of fiber. What was the third one?
Lower saturated fat, lower sugar.
Lower saturated fat, lower sugar, and then combining proteins with carbs to help that tryptophan get up to the brain. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for cooking with me and teaching so much about eating well to sleep better. I'm going to sit down and finish eating all this food I just made.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Thank